So, in order to run something successfully, you have to be consequential. If you want to have a good teacher, then you must find a way to determine whether a person is a good teacher or not. The way that you determine whether someone is a good teacher or not is you go and you listen to them yourself and see if you're learning anything from them, or if you like the way they teach. And you get information from other people of whether they feel enthusiastic about the person who's teaching. Let's say they're teaching math. Now, in the matter of Subud, the organization, a crucial, important aspect of the growth of Subud is the treatment and the processing, or the bringing into the understanding of the gift, the explanations of the gift that Subi gave, new people. And so you need, if you want to have a success with new members, or new people coming in, then you must be consequential. You must have people who are good at this, your best, because your life in Subud, your Subud life, your growth depends on it. What it requires, as Subi was often saying, was that you needed to be quiet and to receive the guidance of God when you talk to someone who was approaching you wanting to know about Subud. So you would need to have people who you were convinced and were sure, because you had watched them operate, that you had someone who was actually following the guidance of God when they talked to that person. In order to do that, you would have to be able to know what guidance was yourself. But by now, those of you who sincerely have accepted the gift fully and completely know those things. You've gone through that process, and you know what guidance is. You know how it operates. It's like when a gate opens, you can go through it. When it closes, you can't. So your own personal notions about things are pretty much left aside. Of course, you approach it as who you are. So one of the main things about having a good group is to have a good group of people who look after new members. Now, if you look further, you really think about it, and you look into that group of people, you could go a number of ways. And you could say, for instance, that, if you have a person, you persist with them. And it seems that's what Subi did. He took whatever was there and he persisted with all of these people who had been placed in that position to look after new members. And he talked to them, and he talked to them, and he talked to them, and he talked to them about how they should behave. And he went on and on and on. That's one way. Another way is to do it through, empirical evidence. In other words, if you have a person who let's say, isn't motivated. They don't really know what they're doing. They're not really sure they want to do it. They don't feel it. They feel obligated because somehow they got the idea because they had started out, they were in the first group of people who joined Subud, that they should be looking after people, which is a kind of fatal flaw, a fatal error that the early organization made when they overlooked what Subi said, which was, well, and it's very reasonable to say that people have been in for a little while and have had some experience. Let them look after the new members because they have a little bit more experience. Until, he said, until you can, arrange things yourself, until you can organize your thing. And that was never done. Somehow, the business of getting the right people, to look after new members was never accomplished. And it led to a lot of bad consequences. A lot of errors were made. A lot of neglect occurred. And other things which I won't go into. But let's just take a look at the kind of person that would be good for helping new members. And you can say, well, we don't need to do that. We look at it spiritually. Okay, sure, yeah, God comes first. But just using our common sense, you can look at it spiritually if you want to. If you dare I say it, if you know how to do that. But you need to have someone who is loving, caring, who is responsible, who likes other people and is sincere about Subud and wants the best for everybody, and all those kind of human attributes that we espouse in Subud and that we are aspiring to. We aspire to become restored human beings. We may not start out being very human, but God will restore us. And that is our understanding, and that's the truth of it. God does restore you to a rightful behavior and good character. He directs you to follow your good character and so on. So, and down the road, another aspect of finding the right people is that the right people at one given time are not necessarily the right people later on. They get busy, they go through things, they make mistakes that cause them to go backwards or whatever. A lot of things happen and they become unsuitable, and then they need to be put aside for the time being. And, although I'm sure it would be controversial, I could say, I think with some confidence, that almost anyone, as long as they can talk, who has the qualities that I was talking about, could be a suitable helper. But the experience that we had was did not show that to be certainly the case. I mean, if you look at the organization of Subud and the numbers, you can see that only 3% of the people who were opened remained in the organization. And that's kind of a hard thing to argue that you're doing really good, because it means a lot of people, for one reason or another, weren't happy with the organization, which they should have been, because, I mean, it's great to have a whole group of people and you all get along and you help each other and you support each other, and it's useful, it's necessary in a lot of endeavors. But most of the people that came in Subud didn't find that to be the case. And if you're prone to doing so, well, you can blame them for it. You can say, well, it's not our fault. We did everything we should do. And if you really believe that way, then either you're right, or if you're not right, then you really shouldn't be listening to me, because you have that attitude already. So you might want to ask yourself, for instance, the question is, how do I feel about my being a helper? And just receive all about that and how you feel and everything else, and then ask yourself the question, how should I feel about being a helper, and see if there's any difference. So in the business, I'm not going to say much more about this right now, but in the business of being sure, and this is what success is all about, it's like having the right things at the right time in the right place, things go well. The business of ensuring that you have, and considering it to be a essential, do or die, life or death type of requirement for the growth of Subud, that you have the best people that you have, and the best way of organizing those people, to be those who assist new members. They don't have to be spiritually advanced, or spiritually this, or spiritually that. Subud may be a spiritual organization, but that doesn't mean that the people in it are spiritual people. It means that they are being assisted by the Spirit, or the one Almighty God, and experience the real experience that we find in terms of being assisted by the one Almighty is that we become, as we said, more ordinary, more regular. In other words, people that anybody else can relate to just as well. Just an ordinary guy. Just me, Bob. It's just me. I'm neither more nor less than anybody else. If I do the best I can, maybe I can help you. Or, more affirmatively, I said, I know I can tell you I have some things that will help you, most likely. And, in my view, that has not been done. Somehow, the kind of ad hoc committee for helping people became the unmovable group of people who, would never. If you want to know how somebody's doing, then you can have a group of their peers or new members or something assess that person in some fair way. Were they a good? Did they carry out their tasks well? You need to find these things out. You need to find out if you're going to get the kind of response like, well, oh yeah, it was great, and I learned a lot of stuff, and I was having some problems. They helped me out with it, and they were very loving, and I called a few times. I really thought, oh, this is terrible, calling at 3 in the morning. They would come through. They would be there for me, and they didn't seem to mind. It was really very inspiring, and I really liked that. That's a good response. And then, of course, a bad response that you might find if you checked would be that, well, I don't know, they seem rather remote, I got the feeling that they didn't really care. They didn't treat me very well. When I was in trouble, they didn't help me and stuff like that. So that's a main thing that needed to be looked after that wasn't looked after. Okay, it's hard for me to talk about this, but there it is. Okay, bye-bye.